All right, let's get to a little birds, shall we? You see the countdown for kickoff. We are 86 days away from the kickoff of the 2024 season. And joining us, my man, Zach Berman, does such a great job covering the birds, all PHLY Eagles show. Zachariah!
Anthony, good to see you.
You too, my brother. Big story is Birds Minicamp coming back off of it, brought to you by TrueMark Financial Credit Union. All right, Zach. So one of the things that came out, and you got to shed some light on this. Why is it so hard for Jalen Hurts to say anything nice about Nick Sirianni?
Yeah, it's a good question because there's a pattern here, if you will, going back to the end of last season. And some of it is, when Jalen's up there, you know how this is, Anthony. You did this for a long time. He doesn't feel obligated to kind of help you out with your question or to kind of go along with the narrative. He doesn't just give the typical cliche answer sometimes. So part of it's the cat and mouse game with him, but he's also he's very intentional and he's savvy. So he should know that when there's a layup about your head coach, if you don't take that layup, if instead you kick it out and you try to hit a half court shot with it, then clearly people are going to read into this. And this happened after the last game of the season. It happened at locker cleanout day. It's something my antenna's up on. I think it's kind of Jalen being Jalen, but it's the easiest question for him to answer is what does it say about Nick that he's kind of given up the play calling or that he's taking this big picture approach? And to say I don't know how to answer that question, or I don't have an answer for you, it mystifies me as well.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I'm trying to figure out a couple things. One, does he just not like Sirianni? Is the two of them do not work? Like we all know the importance of a coach, especially one who comes from the offensive side of the ball and the quarterback, right? We have seen the images are indelible in our minds. Yeah. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. They're always together, right? Like he's always talking to him. And that's the oddest thing. And I don't know if it's just Jalen who's more aloof. I mean, he's a kind of an odd cat. They just don't mesh, or is it a problem? It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I don't know if it's kind of Jalen versus Nick, although he's allowed the interpretation to be read into it. I look at it more kind of Jalen versus the media. The whole rat poison in his mind that it's kind of the approach that he typically takes that I'm he doesn't kind of want to help you out there. But the thing Jalen should know is that when he's up there, he's not speaking to the 20 plus reporters in the auditorium. He's speaking to the millions of Eagles fans or hundreds of thousands of Eagles fans who are consuming that. And for him to leave that open, if it was isolated here, you could say, that's it was right after his last practice. He's just trying to roll out. Yeah. But the fact that this has happened a few times now, I find it odd to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this a while, right? So you know the deal. You just throw the platitude out there.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the easy thing. It's not about helping the media. It's just about, it's just, and for a guy that goes out of his way to say nothing, those answers speak volumes, right? It's like, oh my God, dude, like what?
Yeah, and look, the you mentioned it with Mahomes and Reid, the coach quarterback dynamic. There's always those two are connected. Doug Peterson, he used to say when they drafted Carson Wentz, he said the two of us are married, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the combination. Yeah. And so much of this offseason is about how can you maximize Jalen, or what are they going to do to improve this offense? And a big story this offseason is Nick Sirianni giving up control of the offense, if you will. This is Kellen Moore's offense now. So Jalen should know that this type of question is coming. He only talks publicly twice during the spring. It's not like it's it's not something that should catch him out of left field either. Something a question about his head coach. If you asked him how Austin Watkins is looking, and he says, "I don't know how to answer that question." All right, it's not something he's thinking about. If he asked about the head coach giving up control of the offense, that's a layup right there.
Is he? I mean, he's odd, right? Like he's a different kind of guy. What do you, like? We don't. You've been around him as best you can, right? How would you describe him?
Yeah, ultra competitive, right? That's you like that. I think I don't want to say programmed, but really he's a coach's son who
Yeah,
played for Nick Saban. He went there even in high, he graduated high school early, enrolls second semester there at Alabama, starts as a true freshman, uh, believes, very much like in the Nick Saban approach to things. And I like him personally, but I will also say, if I'm being candid, I'm going into year 13 covering the team. I've covered, Michael Vick and Nick Foles and Sam Bradford, Mark Sanchez, Carson Wentz. You go on down the list. I probably know Jalen least well of
mm-hmm.
all those quarterbacks, and I think part of that is he was drafted during the COVID year, and so I didn't get a chance to know him when he was a rookie. But also I think he kind of has a certain way of how he wants his public image to be, and he's very he does not deviate much from that, and that's his prerogative.
Oh yeah. Listen, it doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant to me what his personality is like. It's just about what happens on the field. I just
Yeah.
find this whole thing just strange, is all.
Yeah.
And
It's
what does this
unnecessary.
say about like this is a big year for him too? Like
Yeah.
from everybody talked about last year, it wasn't like you always hear everybody likes him and they should like him, but there's still a lot of people I talk to who go, yeah, we're a little disappointed in how he was acting last year. Like he's got to step it up a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll give an example, and I'm not afraid to say this, publicly here. So after the Seattle game last year, he throws the interception down the sideline late in the game. Him and AJ, they deviated from the play. That's fine. That's what quarterbacks, and that's great
Yeah.
quarterbacks and great wide receivers do. It did not work. Nick Nick takes the fall for them, right? Nick falls on the store, gives this really clumsy answer. He's ridiculed for it, and Nick kind of views that as his responsibility to do that. AJ then speaks out and says that's not on Nick. I will take that. And then when Jalen's asked about it, Jalen says, "Yeah, we're moving on. I'm not talking about that." Right? I think that's the type of thing where your quarterback
You got to take the
can take
lead.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think there's a part of Jalen that says, I don't know it to you guys. And that's true. He does not know it to the media. He owes it to his head coach, right? Like your head coach is taking the egg on his face for this. You can stand up there and you can say, no, that's not on him. That's on me, right? I made that mistake. I threw that pick. We deviated from the play. Don't blame Nick, blame me. And I think that he chooses not to go that route. As I said, that's his prerogative, but it's the type of thing that I think that would have spoken a lot about Jalen in that situation if he did what AJ did after that and taking the sword, falling
Yeah,
on the sword.
because you're the quarterback, right? We all we talk about leadership and we talk about owning you're the face of the team and the whole thing. That was odd. So what else? So what do you make of this offense? And it's it's so different than what we've seen. What did you see?
Yeah, I saw a lot of introduction, and I know the spring's more about introduction than evaluation, right? The example that I say on the PHLY Eagles show is that if someone read like the rough drafts of an article I wrote, it probably wouldn't be as good as the finished
Mm-hmm.
product, and that's basically we're watching them do the rough draft, we're watching the installation, so I don't read too much into how the offense wasn't that crisp. That said, in the spring, and you know this well, it's passing camp, right? Like there's no real pass rush on you. There's no defensive game plan against you. So if the ball's going in the other team's hands, or if or the defense's hands rather, if the ball's going on the turf, then that's not what you want to see from the offense. But in terms of offensive structure, I do think you're going to see more creativity. You already see the pre-snap movement, the pre-snap motion, and I just think that's going to be brought up to a significant degree come the regular season.
Uh, what about Nick? Now, the role that we're talking about here,
Yeah.
which is, taking a step back from the offense itself. We've seen him take a step back from play calling, and now from the offense. And how does this impact him and, also his future?
Yeah, well, his future, they need to win, and I think Nick knows that, and not just win, they need to win big, right? The As far as his future, look, if this doesn't go well this year, Howie's not going to be blamed for the roster he put together, and Jalen's not going to be blamed as the quarterback. It's going to fall on Nick, and I think Nick should understand that. But what his role is in terms of being the quote unquote CEO coach, I have no objection to that. Like his job is to be the head coach of the whole football team. His job is Monday to Saturday to get them ready for Sunday. His job is to manage the game well on Sunday. His job is to be the leader of the entire team, not just the leader of the offense. And this works exceedingly well in Baltimore. This works exceedingly well in Pittsburgh. This has worked in Detroit. This worked in New England for years, right? I don't think you need to be installing the offense like Sean McVay does or like Kyle Shanahan does in order to be a successful coach.
I agree
but
with you.
Everything else needs to be on you need to have the leadership skills to really be the guy in charge of the whole team.
Look, I agree with you, but in those situations, you got special teams guys, defensive guys, right? He's unique in that he's an offensive guy who is taking a step back from the offense.
You are correct about that. And I think that's where a lot of the questions and the criticism has come. I think that what he did actually speaks to him personally, that he was willing to do this. Now you can say like it was probably the only way he was going to keep his job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he wasn't just going to run it back that way. But I think it's beneficial. Now the question is this, and this might be a good problem to have. But if they're really good this year on offense, Kellen Moore's not going to be here that long, right? Like when people ask about Kellen Moore's future, if the Eagles aren't good, the whole house is being cleaned. If the Eagles are good, someone's going to poach Kellen Moore. So I'm kind of curious to see long term how this plays out, and this is why owners sometimes like when the head coach oversees the offense, because the offensive coordinator is going to get plucked if you're good.
Yeah, and that's the curse of being a good team that your coaching staff, which is why, like, you look at Fangio is a great hire because you don't have to worry about it. He's going to end his career here, right? So you don't have to worry about him being plucked to go be a head coach. And I mean, we saw that before Peterson, right? Doug lost both of his coordinators, couldn't fill it. The trick is to find like veterans. Like, so Andy had Marty Morningway. He had my man from Wisconsin.
Brad Childress.
Brad Childress. Thank you. Brad Childress. So he had veteran guys on that side of the ball. Once he got guys that were plucked from him, he still had veteran guys to lean on until Jim passed away. And we saw what happened.
Yeah. And it was always Andy's offense. And I think, I think ownership kind of saw the first coach Jeffrey Lurie hired was Ray Rhodes, right? A defensive guy. And he comes in and John Gruden's his offensive coordinator. And they have some success early on. John Gruden gets plucked. They don't adequately replace John Gruden. It's Dana Bible who comes in then. And everything kind of went downhill. So point is, there tends to be this idea in coaching that you want to hire the offensive guy because a good offensive coordinator is going to be plucked, and you can kind of keep the continuity of the system. Now, in Nick's case, that was kind of the idea that they brought him in, and as Nick likes to say, they brought him in for his offensive mind. But the only way Nick was going to be here year 4 is if there were going to be changes on both sides of the ball. And the fact that they brought in Kellen Moore, I think it says something about Nick. It says something that he's taking this big picture view. But there are questions either way. If this works big, if this works really well, what's this offense going to look like next season? And if this doesn't work, then you're kind of starting over.
You know what's interesting, real quick, in this portion of the show is brought to you by the Bet Park Sportsbook Casino app. So my buddy VG, Violations Greg, who does a show with me, he's not a Siranni fan. I'm a Siranni fan, right? So we see completely opposite. He thinks and I'll ask you to break the tie. I mean, he says, is he smart? He doesn't seem smart to him. He doesn't seem polished to him. He doesn't know what he does well. That's his criticism of him. And we all see the outward stuff, the display of emotion during the sidelines. I'll ask you, you're around all the time. Is he a smart football man? What does he bring to the table? And again, I see big picture stuff, but you see nuance.
Yeah, I think he brings unique personality characteristics that in that job you're overseeing, at this time of year, 90-man roster, right? A coaching staff of 40, 50 people, in terms of training staff, you go on down the list. And I think he has a personality that allows people to do good work, to enjoy coming into work, the enthusiasm that he has, the ability to connect with those around him. I think he's very organized. I've spoken to a lot of his assistants over the years who are blown away by the level of detail that he goes into, whether it comes into situational football, whether it comes into teaching of fundamentals. So there are personality traits that he has that I think are elite, and that's helped him. And I have to judge by the results here. 3 seasons, 3 playoff appearances, 2 double-digit win seasons, 1 Super Bowl win, or I'm sorry, 1 Super Bowl appearance. That's a really good resume. But yeah, he's not he's not Sean McVay, he's not Kyle Shanahan. He's a different type of coach than those guys.
Does he have their football intellect?
I think he does, sure. But I don't think he has their play calling chops,
innovation, right?
Yeah. We haven't seen that from him. And frankly, I don't think the Eagles offense has ever been particularly innovative. Or in the past few years has not been innovative. And I think their strength is like, our guys are better than your guys. We're going to try to maximize our guys. But I didn't think they did enough last year to evolve. And I think that definitely caught up to them. And frankly, if your strength as a head coach is how you lead, how you manage people, and if you're going to get credit in 2021 when they, when they're 2-5 and they turn that around and make the playoffs, then when you're 10-1 and you falter, you collapse at the end of the year, like the Eagles did last year, that's similarly on you. And Nick did not do a good job in November and December and, in the January last year.
All right, last thing, and this is an interesting question. So I had somebody pose this to me, and I kind of straddled on the fence a little bit, to be honest with you. They said to me, right now, you could have Jordan Love for the rest of his career or Jalen for the rest of his career. Now, obviously, recency bias, Jordan Love, the last half of the season and then the playoffs was sensational, right? But in fairness, we saw Jalen do that 2 years ago.
Exactly.
We saw how terrific Jalen was. Now, there's things I love about Love from a technical standpoint, but it was an interesting question that I kind of straddled. What's your choice? What's your answer?
Yeah, Jalen, because I've seen the high watermark from Jalen. And the high watermark was in the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes. You can argue he played as well as Mahomes in that Super Bowl game.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
The best he played was on the biggest stage. And I would go Jalen because there's more evidence than the high watermark is there. But certainly the way Jordan Love played in Dallas last year in that playoff game, it's hard to play much better than that too.
Well, and he did it in
Yeah,
Detroit. I mean, he did it.
exactly.
He had a great run.
Yeah.
The only thing that would worry me about Jalen is going forward. What worries me about Jalen going forward is some of the technical stuff, mechanical stuff. He's got he took a big step backwards in my mind. Fleeing the pocket way too early. His eyes were down. Like there's things that he needs that I did not expect to see last year.
I am with you, and that's why this year is going to be so fascinating for Jalen as well. Because if you talk about the competitiveness and the intangibles and all these characteristics that he has that the Eagles think are elite in terms of like non-playing ability, it's easy to say that when things are great and you're going to the Super Bowl. Where that really comes out is when things are against you, and that did not manifest itself well in December last year, and it needs to this year.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's gonna be interesting. Zach, great stuff, buddy. We appreciate it, pal. Look forward to seeing you here.
I am on with Bo at noon today. We're gonna be breaking down the biggest stories from the spring, so make sure you check that out.
I cannot wait. It's always a must watch for me. Love it, buddy. Keep up the great work. Thanks, pal.
Thank you.
We all silly like the mayor.